It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be here sharing this morning with you people. Thanks to the management of Maharajah's College of Pharmacy. Thanks also to my good friend, Dr. Shankar. Yesterday evening he was reminding me that it's been almost 3 or 4 years since he is persistently after me to come to Vizianagaram to address the students here. And thanks for your patience and perseverance, Dr. Shankar. I can't see your face because you are hiding behind me. Thank you, and I think the opportune time for me has come now. You know, it could not have been any other time, because probably it is the right time to come and participate in PHARMAELAN. I don't know what's that word ELAN means. There is a Hindi word called ELAN, that is shouting, huge noise. Was that the meaning, or? I will be talking about in an event which the name of which I do not know. So you know how much I know. So thanks a lot for reading out patiently my brief biography, which talks about so many things, so many achievements, or whatever. But nevertheless, let me honestly tell you, the day I joined pharmaceutical sciences in 1969, so that in the very neighboring city here in Vizianagaram, was a big turning point for me. So I want all of you to realize that when you study to become a pharmaceutical scientist or a pharmacy practitioner, today I cannot differentiate pharmaceutical sciences from pharmacy practice, because it's together. The day you chose to do pharmaceutical sciences, that means you have chose to make a huge difference to human lives, which is very important. Nevertheless, many of you have questions in your mind how we will achieve that, how we will do that. I do understand the confusion. I do understand the lack of direction that you have, because I walk through the same corridors as you are doing right now. I have had those questions in my mind. After we form what? After I'm formed what? If you really are interested in making a huge difference to the humans, particularly those people who are suffering, what you do after B.Pharm, just a B.Pharm or an M.Pharm, is just the beginning. You have to focus and become an expert in a particular area. Only then you can really impact lives. Now, when you start thinking about that, don't think in a herd mentality. That means the entire class would think that a pharmacy has no future. But if you are thinking along with the people, then that's herd mentality. Each individual, you are very different. You have your own hidden talents. You have your own hidden capabilities, which perhaps you don't recognize. But you have to look inside yourself. You start recognizing that. And really say that, what I am capable of achieving? What is close to your heart? What is your passion? And if any of these three things are aligned with pharmaceutical sciences, that means what you are capable of doing, what is close to your heart, and what is your passion, then you are destined to become somebody who can impact lives. Don't decide that now. Study, learn, see what is in your minds. What do you understand about pharmaceutical sciences? What do you like most about pharmaceutical sciences? Only then make the decision. In a herd mentality, you hear what others say. It's like calling a movie hit when 10 people say that it is a hit, and without seeing that movie. Or if the movie is by your favorite actor or actress, then you say it got to be hit. That means you already made up your mind that whatever nonsense that movie is, it's a success. That is herd mentality. But when you are doing pharmaceutical sciences, don't be a victim of the herd mentality. Each one of us, each one of you has a gift. God has given you a gift. You have to recognize that. And that's only when you start impacting lives. Now you may consider that this is a message by somebody who is senior, or somebody who has seen life, or somebody who has to say these things because it's a pep talk. Honestly speaking, I learned while I traveled the path. I'll give you a small example. In my M.Pharm, I did pharmaceutical chemistry. In my PhD, I did pharmacology. And when I started, I taught physiology and pharmacology. Then I went into drug discovery research, and ultimately I became a manager of science. And then I moved into professional service. I edited a journal. And then I became president of the Indian Pharmaceutical Association, not for 2 years and 4 years. Now I have really understood what my work is. It took me 40 years in life travel. Even if I can impact lives today, I consider that all the 40 years I traveled is worth. So don't think that after B.Pharm you should be impacting lives, No, that's the beginning of the journey. But you must be prepared. So there is a adage, there is a saying, luck favors those prepared minds. If you're not prepared, you cannot accept any challenge. You cannot even recognize an opportunity that is sitting in front of you. Because your mind is not prepared. And people with herd mentality are not prepared. They have preconceived notions without even understanding what is their worth. So be prepared. And the traveling in life to achieve something is very tough. And it's not easy to travel or face, tough road or tough journey, tough task ahead. When going gets tough, this is the saying, please try and understand. When the going gets really tough, the tough gets going. I don't know how many of you have actually understood this, I repeat for your sake, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. So if you are the tough, you will go places. But if you think that going is tough, you will abandon your journey before it actually begins. When you abandon that, you can't complain about anything. So this is the message I am giving. Today's topic is advances in pharmaceutical sciences and healthcare challenges. The challenge in front of me is to talk about advances in pharmaceutical sciences and how it meets challenges. Right? That's my challenge. Pharmaceutical sciences are advancing at a very rapid speed. There's no question about it. It is only a matter of deciding whether these advances are actually impacting or actually answering healthcare challenges. Now let's think about pharmaceutical sciences advances. Now, across the world, when you are looking at pharmaceutical sciences as a field, advances are common across the world. When you are studying about advances, all of you across the country, all of you across the globe would be studying the same thing. But when it comes to health challenges, in the world over, health challenges are not the same. Health challenges change from region to region, country to country, time to time, population to population, ethnic group to ethnic group, if you really want me to say. But advances are the same, so how do they meet the challenges? I'll make an attempt to talk about, first let's understand what are the health challenges, and then how do we harness those advances to meet the health challenges of today, the health challenges of our region, the health challenges that we may face tomorrow. Are we able to predict those things? This is how I look at the topic. May I have the next slide, please? Okay. First challenge for me. I'm sure all of you cannot see these slides. People in the back row, are you able to see the slide very clearly? If you can't, it's a challenge. I'm sorry, because the size of or magnification of that slide may not be adequate enough for you to visualize it from there. So I would also say loud what is there on the slide, such that for those people who cannot see it, they get the benefit of it. I'm saying pharmacy for future. No, I'm not defining pharmacy as pharmaceutical sciences or pharmacy practice. No, we say pharmacy. Let's for a second, let me make myself clear by defining what is meant by pharmacy. Pharmacy has two components. One, the sciences component and the practice component. Pharmaceutical sciences deals with production of quality medicines and supply chain of that quality medicines to the end user. End user is the patient. Now let's put the word quality. Quality medicines, quality discovery, quality development, quality production, quality supply chain. Now the next component is when a patient uses them. So a doctor prescribes them, they go and get it in a pharmacy store and the patient uses them. But this should be under quality pharmaceutical care. Even that becomes the job of a pharmacist. Falls within the scope of a pharmaceutical scientist or pharmacy practitioner. So a quality medicine by itself is not going to add value to the patient. If he takes it wrongly, it may even do damage. So therefore that is also essential. So in my opinion, pharmacy means it's not just production, it's not just research, it's just not supply chain management. It is also ensuring that it is given to the patient under the right advice, the right dose, right time, right regimen, such that the right outcome comes in the patient. Now let's take a step back and start looking at pharmaceutical sector in the country. It makes sense for me to make this statement because India is being regarded as pharmacy of the world. Probably you all might have heard about that. Why we are being called as pharmacy of the world is simply because India has a pharmaceutical market, enjoys a pharmaceutical market of somewhere near $32 billion. And if you want to understand what is $32 billion, it is 2 lakh crores. Per year, the market size is 2 lakh crores. And among these 2 lakh crores, almost 1 lakh crores of medicines are manufactured in India and exported to various countries in the world. And in the map of the world, there is not even a single country which doesn't import medicines from India. Among these countries, there are highly regulated countries. Highly regulated countries means that the drug regulatory system in those countries is so robust that they go anywhere in the world and inspect a facility if that facility is manufacturing drugs for the use of people living in that country. And to a moderately regulated country, to even countries which do not have good regulatory network and they come under WHO regulation. We manufacture medicines for all of them. In India, our facilities to manufacture these drugs, they are in the range of about 1,500 to 2,000 facilities are actually recognized by various regulatory authorities approved for manufacturing of drugs for import into those countries. This information is very relevant for you. That talks about our manufacturing capacity. So, regulatory compliance and manufacturing drugs as per quality norms prevailing in the globe is very easy for Indian manufacturers. When it comes to domestic manufacturing, we have more than 7,000 or 8,000 facilities that manufacture medicines for domestic use. Are they that strictly regulated as they are regulated by US FDA or EMEA or MHRA? Probably not. But we have a drug regulatory system in the country at two levels, the central level called CDSCO and at the state level, FDA or Director Drugs Control in each state, and then we have regulators, we have licensing authorities, they are inspecting, and so let us believe that every drug is being manufactured in quality. And the government is also bent upon making those drugs at a cheaper price under the scheme Jan Aushadhi, such that generic drugs are manufactured in an affordable manner and is distributed all over the country to people to increase the accessibility and affordability and availability of the medicines to everybody all across the country. What is our problem? When we manufacture for the entire world, we also manufacture for all our requirements, all our needs of the people, with a cost differential that it can be made available to cheap people. Available cheaply to people. See, English, if you don't speak properly, it really, sounds bad. Cheap people versus at cheap rates and, cheap prices to people makes a lot of difference. Students, you must realize that an Indian manufactured drug is distributed, let's say, take for example US. If a medicine is manufactured in India, is exported to the US, it is dispensed to a US citizen by a pharmacist under pharmaceutical care. And oftentimes the dispensing pharmacist is an Indian. And the person who is receiving that medicine is an Indian NRI in the US. So just look at the equation that India is manufacturing these drugs and then it is going to US and it is dispensed by an Indian pharmacist and then to an Indian patient. Can you say the same thing for the same drug in India? That means within our country, is it being manufactured by an Indian? Yes. Is it being delivered, dispensed by an Indian pharmacist? Yes. Under quality pharmaceutical care and advice? The answer says is big no. The patient goes there and then he asks, for a medicine and then it is given to him irrespective of whether there is a prescription or not. There is no advice given whether you should take it 2 times a day or 3 times a day, before breakfast, after breakfast, with water, without water. You know, after prescription is over, what he needs to do, whether he should come for a refill prescription or just that's it and it cannot be taken any further. So we, being the pharmacy of the world, we are unable to provide our medicines under quality pharmaceutical care to our own patients. If you talk about health challenge, this is the biggest challenge India faces. So before we get into advances and how health advances meet health challenges, I just want to let you understand, you have to evaluate the situation to understand what is the health challenge. And once you understand the health challenge, then the question of how I can harness a pharmaceutical sciences development to meet this health challenge. And don't expect somebody else to do the job, please. The job is yours. When you grow up, when you complete your graduation, post-graduation and specialization, whatever additional specialization that you do, it is your task, your job to take the pharmaceutical advances and convert them into easily implementable solutions to the health challenges that are faced in your locality, in your country, by patients of your country origin. In a way, let me say, that's the bottom line of my talk. I gave you a perspective of what I'm going to talk about, then let us look at the slides. No, the previous slide, the first slide. Yeah, this is. So latest developments impact the shape of pharmacy for future. So you need to understand what are the latest developments. And the latest developments, what they should impact, I have defined it here. Please see this very carefully, that the advances must influence education, the way we learn and teach. Most important aspect of the advances in pharmaceutical sciences, what it should impact is the way we teach, the way we learn and teach. It's very important for you. So a teacher has a tremendous role in converting the latest advances in a manner that is understandable to the students he is teaching. Oftentimes we hear this word, they are not in the syllabus. I don't know how many people agree or disagree with that statement, but it is in the syllabus or it is not in the syllabus. For God's sake, let syllabus not decide what you should learn and what you should not learn. If you are going to be a pharmaceutical scientist, it is your business to learn every latest development that is relevant, and it is the business of your pharmaceutical teacher to bring that to you. If that's not done, then the first impact of the latest development is lost right there. You're not familiar. You haven't heard the word. Your teacher hasn't told you. So I asked the question, why did you not tell the teacher? The teacher says it's not in the syllabus. Then how can you apply that pharmaceutical sciences development to meet the health challenge when you are not even aware of that? So we have to think about it. So latest developments and advances in pharmaceutical sciences are only relevant to you if you learn about them, and it's only relevant when the educators start telling about them in a manner that is understood. Right? So that's very important. Second, they should impact the research, the way we explore and apply. Being an editor of a journal for 20 years, I understood what is meant by research in our country. Our research is always must have already been reported in some paper. So we start out by saying that somebody has shown this, so I am trying to do this. If that somebody has done it wrongly, then we would continue to do it wrongly and say that we quoted that paper, sir. That's not research. Research is something that you are going to devise in your laboratory, and you are going to use the knowledge to design your own experiment, not somebody else's experiment, and implement it in your laboratory for your research without understanding whether that experiment is relevant for your research or not. At times what I speak probably is not relevant to some of the population sitting here, that's why they are not paying attention, you know. I don't care. Because you have to decide whether it is relevant or not. And if you start doing things wrongly, nobody corrects you, because you will do things wrongly, and later on you realize that you may never realize that whatever research you have done was done on the wrong footing first place. So pharmaceutical sciences advances and development must impact our research in a way that the way we do the experiment and the way we do apply that knowledge that we gain out of that research. Usually the outcome of any process is evaluated by outcomes evaluation. If I am a good teacher, I don't have to get a certificate that I am a good teacher. I don't have to get a prize that I am a best teacher. You know what decides whether I am a best teacher or not? The students. When they go out and when they tell to themselves, to their parents, to somebody saying that I have a teacher who is very good and he taught me exactly what is meant by pharmacology. My understanding of pharmacology improved after I heard his lecture. That is the best teacher, because he is impacting. The outcome is the student feeling that that he is the best teacher. But many of us would say that I am a best teacher because I received 4 awards. So pharmaceutical sciences advances are something that impact the way we do our research and the way we apply our outcomes of that research. I hope you are understanding what I am trying to say, because it's just at a slightly higher level. Then pharmacy, our latest developments are, they impact our drug development, the way we discover, develop and seek approval. Today it is routinely said that drug discovery and development is very complex. It takes 15 years and it costs in excess of $2.5 billion as today's estimates. Everybody says this word all the time. And your principal made a statement that in a discussion last night, I told him that drugs can be even discovered with under $250,000. So how is that statement and how is that information that you read that new drug discovery would take 15 years in excess and then $2.5 billion in excess of cost? How can you match these two things? What I was saying is that when you discover or develop a treatment for a patient-centric approach to cure a group of people suffering from a unique problem, and you are trying to discover a drug, the focus is to affect that patient population, and that focused effort might cost much less, and you may develop drugs in a much shorter time period, which has a clear impact on that population of people, because you aim to change that population of patients. So development in pharmaceutical sciences should bring that concept to you, that it should be patient-centric, not blockbuster-centric. The general tendency is when I spend $2.5 billion to discover a drug, the company's tendency is that I must sell this drug in excess of $5 to $7 billion per year to recover the costs. And anything selling about $5 billion is called a blockbuster. So how many blockbusters I have created? But they're not really looking at how many blockbusters have really created blockbuster value in the patients. What are the outcomes? How the outcomes are influenced by this drug? In a pharmacoeconomical perspective, if you think about, and without the blockbuster drug, the patients are still getting relieved. And with the blockbuster drug and the huge cost, the patients are getting a small benefit in their relief. The relief in patients is measured as quality of life. So the quality of life incidences have gone up by only a couple of points at an expense of about thousands of rupees, then there is no pharmacoeconomical value for that blockbuster, because it's not changing or impacting any life significantly at low cost. It is producing an insignificant change with a huge significant cost burden on the patient. So today, drug discovery, drug approvals are also based on pharmacoeconomical evaluation. That's why I put the word that the pharmaceutical latest development should impact the drug development in a way that we discover, develop, and seek approval. If you can show a clear benefit to a group of patients, you would get approval. Now, when I talk about this, we should also decide what is country relevance of what I am talking about. I have defined Indian pharmaceutical sector as the pharmacy of the world. They manufacture and sell drugs to all the countries, but all those drugs are of generic in nature. It is not their innovator products. It is the drugs that have become generic, that means patents have expired. It's no longer innovator's property. Any company can manufacture that and market that, provided they demonstrate that that generic is bioequivalent to the innovator product and that they receive approval. Under these two conditions, what we call is abbreviated IND, abbreviated NDA, ANDA, new drug application. And India files as many of NDAs in the abroad and get majority of them approved, and then we market. These are all generic products. So we have not really, in our pharmaceutical industry, we have not really looked at the healthcare challenges, the disease burden, the country-specific nature of what drugs we should discover and develop for our own patient population. So therefore, pharmaceutical sciences, when you want to harness the advances, that's what should be your priority. And then you have to bring it into practice. The way we advise, monitor, and use medicines for better outcomes in patients. Madam Vizianagaram is sitting here, she has been telling me, sir, for the patients, the students can create value to the patients by working by bedside. But people are not recognizing it. They are not placing the jobs in the hospital where we can really impact. And she is absolutely right. Because the pharmacy students, pharmacy practice students can change outcomes by working bedside, and it is the responsibility of the regulator, policymaker, and the government to ensure that such people are included. The healthcare team elsewhere is a combination of three people, three healthcare professionals. The prescriber or the physician, the nurse or the paramedical experts, and the pharmacist. In India, in our government books, healthcare team means it is the doctor and the nurse. If the doctor is not there, they would like to put a RMP doctor or a Ayush doctor or whoever in that team, but they have not even included pharmacists in our healthcare profession. So that means our government in its health policy, national health policy, is not interested in patient outcome. They are interested only in numbers of how many cheap drugs are made available to public. It's numbers. So somebody would say 250,000 villages have been electrified. Similarly, they say in 250,000 villages we are making cheap drugs available at Janaushadhi, this thing, so people can easily access, take those medicines and start eating the peppermints. We're not really looking at the possibility of medication errors and medicine-induced problems in those patients if they have not taken that and the right advice. And that is very much necessary for outcomes. So when I talk about pharmaceutical sciences developments, I get emotional because unless these developments are made to work in all these different ways, those developments are really important for us. It is of only literature value. But when we can harness them and make use such that lives are impacted by virtue of our ability to utilize those developments for healthcare benefits, that's when we have succeeded. And the purpose of telling you all this to you is that you are the future. You are going to understand this, you are going to convert those developments into implementable solutions for healthcare challenges faced by our country. And somewhere in the background the balloon busted saying that whatever I have said is correct. Okay. Next slide. So advances in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences scope must have a country perspective. I don't want to talk about anything that's not implementable in this country. If an American patient receiving palliative care of extreme value, if our Indian patient, when that person is standing in the line in hot sun for 4 hours to treat his dengue fever, what good is that palliative care that is available in UK or US? Why do we have to be proud of that when we cannot implement that in India? So I want you to think that way. It should have a country perspective. Must be patient-centric. Must not be like blockbuster, I'm selling this drug and I'm making so much money and then my company turnover is so many crores, then I am in the Forbes list of billionaires. You know, we have companies, Sun Pharma, you know, Dilip Sangvi, richest person. I do agree that he has contributed tremendously, but is he the top 10 Indian companies, are they worried about whether these drugs are available under proper pharmaceutical care to patients in India? That is their societal responsibility. And we have to inculcate that in them. So unless the developments in pharmaceutical sciences can be brought down to patient-centric, that they can give value to the patient, demonstrable value, because most of the time the patient value we are talking about is theoretical. It has done like this there, it is done like that in another country. There are PubMed reports, 250 of them, but there is not even a single report from India. And that literature is not applicable to India. We have to demonstrate by evidence that in Indian population, in Indian patients, this has the value created. And that clinical research, that pharmacoepidemiology, the value of drugs, the way they are given and the way the outcomes come is again in the hands of pharmacy people. They have to generate that type of data. And that's why the advances should be patient-centric. Must focus on developing highly competent human resources with quality. Now, workforce to work as pharmacists, to impact pharmaceutical care and pharmaceutical services and pharmaceutical sciences is very important. World over, people are, all pharmaceutical organizations are talking about workforce development. In India, unfortunately, we talk about the number of pharmacy graduates, the number of pharmacy colleges. Good numbers. We have in excess of 1,000 pharmacy colleges that are offering B.Pharm, in excess of about 1,200 diploma or 700 diploma institutions that are offering diploma in pharmacy, and in excess of 700 plus or 800 plus postgraduate institutions offering M.Pharm, and maybe about 100 or 200 or 250 institutions offering Pharm D. But that's not workforce development. Workforce development is how many competent people who can create a value to the patient lives are actually employed and working on the field. That's the workforce. What is our requirement and how many of such competent resources are available, whether we have adequate workforce or we still need to generate those workforce. Those numbers do not exist in our country. Because we have 8 lakhs registered pharmacists. And we have, out of so many pharmacies, 70% of them are operating without a registered pharmacist behind the scenes. So what is the value of 8 lakh pharmacists registered? So that's not workforce development. I'm throwing these challenges I'm trying to be highly provocative. Why I'm trying to be provocative is I want you to understand and I want you to think and work hard towards the solutions. Because you are the people who are going to provide the solutions. It's not me to do the job. Because I'm 65, I'm almost retired. I will only talk maybe in another 5 years or so, talks like this, and afterwards I retire from that also. But if I can encourage during my talk at least a handful of you to take the profession seriously and define how the profession has to be for the country, I have achieved my target. That is my outcomes evaluation. So I really want some of you who take this seriously to think seriously about it and then work towards how I can harness pharmaceutical sciences developments in creating these problems, in creating solutions for these problems that we face. So the competent workforce we are talking about is R&D scientists, operators, personnel. Operations personnel I'm an industry person. So the people who are working in manufacturing operations, quality operations, those are operations personnel. R&D scientists are the guys who are doing research and development. Okay? So that's the difference. Teachers and researchers. I separate teachers and researchers because some teachers are also researchers, some teachers are pure teachers. Some researchers are researchers, they don't teach. But it is really, the workforce development should also have competent teachers and competent researchers. Pharmacy practice professionals, we require them. Because today we are trying to bring pharmacy practice into the country without really having a pharmaceutical professional with long-term experience teaching them. So the teachers are also learning while they are teaching. But the teachers have more experience so they can learn faster. Because they are at the mature age of learning anything, while students are, maturing. So this is the difference between. And we also need regulators and policy makers. Regulators and policy makers make a huge difference. Regulators are the guys who are going to implement and policy makers are going to think about it. So please understand, if a regulator doesn't believe that this needs to be regulated, everything goes havoc. If a policy maker doesn't think that it should be included in the policy, you create a policy for the government to implement where there is no role for pharmacists. And a few years ago, national health policy did not even mention pharmacist's name. You are not aware of these things. But in the recent healthcare policy, national health policy, in a 72-page document, PDF document, if you search pharmacist, there are 2 places where the pharmacist word is there. So we are at least happy that at 2 places pharmacist is figuring out. In my opinion, in the national health policy, it should start with a pharmacist and should end with a pharmacist, because pharmacist is one of the most competent, technically valuable workforce that can impact health outcomes in the country. I know that, I keep saying that, so some policy maker has to listen to it and put it in the policy. Because unfortunately, whatever I say cannot go into the policy. So the advances in pharmacy, the scope of them is to create regulators and policy makers who understand the value of pharmacy, pharmaceutical sciences, and implement them. Put them in the national policy such that it can be implemented. I can proudly say something here. We have a project called RATCP, Revised National Tuberculosis Control Program. Okay. Tuberculosis Control Program was a policy implemented by the government that now it is a revised national tuberculosis control program. And today in that policy, government believes that the pharmacist is an integral part of that program who is capable of early detection and early advice to tubercular patients that they can and refer them to a medical expert who get confirmed and come back to the pharmacist for implementation of the the TB drugs program. What is that called? DOTS TB program. In a national policy, now it is saying that the community pharmacist plays a major role. It is a victory that the government has recognized that the community pharmacist plays a tremendous role in arresting and controlling and reducing tuberculosis burden in our nation. We have such burdens of infectious diseases, AIDS, as well as non-communicable diseases. So much disease burden in the country. So all policies, all documents must clearly define a role for pharmacists. And that happens only when we imbibe the advances in pharmaceutical sciences and start implementing them in developing the workforce. That's the bottom line of that slide. You know, that is how it changes. Next slide, please. Who is doing the control? Yeah, okay. So what we need to do? We need to focus on national disease burden. I talked about RNTCP problem. I mean, this thing, tuberculosis is a national disease burden. And always think about improvement of health and how our education, how our research and how we perform our duties would impact that. Focus on safe use of drugs and containment of AMR. Now, antimicrobial resistance is a major problem. And India is contributing, without knowing, is a major contributor to AMR global burden. We don't realize that. We sometimes proudly said that India is pharmacy of the world, but we are also diabetic capital of the world. We have the largest number of diabetic patients in our country. We contribute to AMR because antibiotics are recklessly used by patients. Not only that, by food industry, poultry, fisheries, everybody use them so nicely that we expose environment and our food sources and patients to antibiotics where they are not required, such that these antibiotic exposure can isolate and allow the resistant strains to develop. So we contribute without thinking about the antibiotic use. So we have to really address this at two levels. One is how we can rationalize antibiotic usage and how we can research to produce super drugs for these superbugs. So there's clear national priority. We have to do both. And that is where can we use the pharmaceutical sciences advances. Focus on better outcomes in patients. Because I have said 3 times already, we don't really study the outcomes of drugs in patients. Outcomes research is not a priority field for medical profession as well as pharmacists. Patient is joining, treatment is given, discharge. That's it. We don't comparatively study from one drug regimen to another drug regimen and what is the outcome, which outcome is better, and what is the gold standard of treatment that we can define for Indian population. We have not done that. I think it is high time that we should do that for our own country. Focus on better treatment options, rational use of medicines, repurposing of drugs. Sometimes we say it's old drug, you can't really use it. But so many other diseases can be controlled by repurposing, reusing those drugs, because we have to do a very structured study. Use alternative medicine as adjunct therapy. We also claim that we have Ayurveda, we have Siddha, we have Unani, we have herbal drugs, we have a heritage of understanding these herbal drugs right from the days of, Sushruta and all those people. We have an Ayurvedic formulary, Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia. But are we really employing that as an adjunct therapy to get again better outcomes? I keep hearing people talking about it. Oh, I'm being treated for diabetes with metformin for such a long time. But now I stopped and I started taking this herbal drug and my blood glucose levels have come down. Now, how far this is true? Is the patient making a mistake? Or is he doing the right thing? Only when we have documented outcomes evaluation studies, only then we can establish that. And pharmaceutical scientists are the most competent people to do this type of studies and surveys. This is another point that I wanted to, emphasize on. Next slide, please. And Steve Jobs, you're all familiar with who is Steve Jobs. He made this statement, and one of the most powerful impact statement is biggest innovations of the 21st century will be at the intersection of biology and technology. Intersection of biology and technology. Molecular biology, genomics, genome mapping, DNA sequencing, and the IT interface. Have you heard about Human Genome Project? Probably you have not started your studies at all. Late 90s, US and UK spent billions of dollars to map the human genome in two huge groups, worked on mapping the entire human genome. And they published in 2 research papers, one in Nature and one in Science. That happens to be the century, end of century gift, human genomics. In those days, to sequence a DNA, they used to work so hard, DNA sequencer. Today, big data computers and high-speed DNA sequencing, human genome is sequenced in seconds, milliseconds time. You can compare 2 genomes so quickly. You can understand the single nucleotide polymorphisms that are existing in a DNA, in a genome. These are all buzzwords. I don't want to confuse you with those buzzwords. But then molecular biologists use this, or genomic scientists use this. And pharmacogenomics is an area where you're going to differentiate one person from the other person, the way they react to the drugs. We still prescribe today just medicine because it should be useful to general population. So you are also is a good responder of this drug. This is an assumption made. But when you have such technology available, you can quickly see whether you respond to this drug or not, or whether you fall in those subtypes of categories where they abnormally react to this drug, or your metabolism is not going to metabolize this drug or rapidly metabolize this drug. All these possibilities are there. We have to bring them to common practice. That's very important. So what Steve Jobs said is absolutely true. It is happening at the junction of biology and technology. Next slide, please. I would quickly list out top 5 emerging innovations. Through pharmacogenomics and analysis of DNA, they would decide whether he or she would respond to a particular treatment and ensure that that treatment is given to them, such that the best outcome can come. So through that sequencing, we realize whether the patient is a responder class or non-responder class, or he has any metabolism that would create unwanted metabolites and undue toxicity. Can you think of bringing that type of medical development for treatment to our huge population suffering from diseases in India? It's a huge challenge. That's where we have to harness our development to meet that challenge for Indian population. Health sensors. These health sensors are either smartphone or wristband type. They sense your body. They sense your body functions and quickly give an output to see how is your disease control or how are your various parameters. This would feed into a doctor's patient information chart. Now, what is our situation today? I undergo lipid profile every 6 months or every 1 year or every 2 years. I have a file in which I file all those things. What if I have a sensor and then if I go into a diagnostic test laboratory, they feed the result and it collates with all the results that I have for the past 15 or 20 years. If I have suffering from hypercholesterolemia and I'm taking statins, let's say a particular dose of statin, which I'm taking, at one go the doctor gets, he started this statin at this time and then for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, he's done for this, and then his total cholesterol and LDL, and cholesterol LDL ratio and HDL levels are as follows. It all can come in one screen. It's easy to decide whether the dose of the statin that I am taking and my control of dyslipidemia over a period of time is perfect or not. For that you require these sensors. Such technologies are available. Real-time data that can be remotely monitored from clinical research. And the patient is sitting somewhere in a remote area. And he has a heart problem. So ECG has to be taken. So with a handheld device, you take the ECG and then because it is due to high data connection, it is relayed to an equipment sitting in a cardiologist and he can see and then advise what should be done. And that technology is not very difficult, let me tell you. You chat while I am talking to you, you chat on WhatsApp with your friends and get the responses, songs, music, photographs, everything, and you take a selfie here and then you send it to them. I'm in a boring picture, I'm listening and look at my face. That person immediately would say, oh, I'm very sorry, I'm in this movie, I'm getting excited. Oh, you poor guy, and then you say that, oh, how lucky. All that happens while we are sitting and talking. Smartphone technology. But we're not imagining that that can be implemented in relaying the status of our health condition, of our patient condition to a clinician on his desk and then get an advice. That's possible. It is coming. It's coming in a big way. Next slide, please. 3D printing. Now this is one word everybody talks about. I also talk about. I don't understand that at all. So let me honestly tell you, I don't know how 3D printing works. But what 3D printing means is that a patient requires a particular treatment, particular dose, you can print that formulation in the titrated dose manner out of a 3D printer or an instrument that prints that 3D, the dosage form of the required strength, of the required regimen, and it is delivered to the patient. So that means we are removing the manufacture of medicines somewhere and then transporting them all over the place to a wholesaler, to the distributor, to the pharmacy store, and that guy is keeping it in the refrigerator, whether the refrigerator switched on or switched off, we don't know. And then we go with the prescription and then we will look at that and we say that, oh, this required strength is not there. You are prescribed 1.25, I have 2.5, but if you can break it in the middle, you can use it. So where is the dose titration? So 3D printing allows the personalized dose delivered to the patient. So which means that instead of companies having a supply chain, they have 3D printing equipment all over the place, and then wherever you go, you submit your prescription and they print the drug, the final dosage form, and it comes. Not on a Xerox paper or not on a printed paper. It is the real three-dimensional, dosage form given to you. If you ask me how it works, I have no idea, right? And the first 3D printed epilepsy drug, Tritam, has already been approved by FDA. So we are getting there. So we have to understand. So as students who are graduating and becoming aspiring to be pharmaceutical scientists, you must know what is 3D printing. You should be able to stand here and say, you are outdated, you are old, 3D printing works this way. Right? That would be great value because I will sit there and listen to you because I am ready to learn any given time. Right? You should also be. I'm very sure some of you should go home and then do research on 3D printing and then give a seminar in this very college about how 3D printing works and what are the advantages and disadvantages and what it takes to bring that technology to India. Nanotechnology, we talk about nanotechnology all the time. There are so many papers are being published about nano. You know, I thought even one of them is our nano car, right? Small, can get you anywhere. You know, it crosses roads, barriers, you know, everything so easily. But what the nanotechnology is trying to do is that drug delivery, drug detection in plasma, and drug targeting, all are in one. And you have even nano-surgical robots who can perform surgery. Where a physician cannot reach, this nanobot, a robot, can reach, I think, deep interior into a cerebral artery or something like that, and then it has to extricate a small clot that is causing problem in the senses of the individual, and he is losing consciousness in the middle and then again becoming conscious because of that little tiny clot that is obstructing blood flow to that optical lobe or wherever. This robot, nanobot, goes there and comes back. And you know, this is technology. What Steve Jobs said, interface of technology and biology. These are the ones we're talking about. And then finally, artificial intelligence, big data. When I was doing my master's, data means chemical abstracts, and I used to go to the library and then read the chemical abstracts and then identify which are all the abstracts that are essential for me and then write it down in a book and go home and then in the night read it out. Next morning go to the professor and say, sir, this fellow has said this fellow has said this fellow has said this. Ah, that's good, you know, let's start writing based on that. You know, this is how. Searching the chemical abstracts is a big pain because there are so many. But we used to do that and we used to get a lot of joy because we have done so much literature search. I used to have 3 or 4 books in which I wrote all the abstracts, you know. Today, it's all available at the tip of your fingers, either on your smartphone or on your computer. You connect Google, you know, PubMed. There's so many search engines, you know, get you more and more information. The information is so much that your brain cannot process it. Now, artificial intelligence and big data processing, it is actually taking all the information that is available on a particular project, on a particular topic, on a particular drug, all over the world, literature from years together, it puts that together and churns it based on certain keywords that you give and give you an essence of that. And through this, people are able to recognize treatments for certain diseases because there is a reference 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago in an obscure journal, which the person would have never got it, but through artificial intelligence and big data processing, you can do it. And that saves you the trouble of discovering a new drug when the old drug, there is evidence that it worked. And so you can repurpose the drugs. So this is one way of using the latest advances, IT, big data analytics, and artificial intelligence to discover what can be done or what is already known. In other words, to prevent reinventing the wheel. I hope you understand what's meant by reinventing the wheel. If the solution is already existing but you don't know and you start from scratch again to find the same solution which is already found somewhere else, the whole process is called reinventing the wheel. You don't have to reinvent the wheel is already there. Right? So that's what the point. So that's the kind of artificial intelligence. Now, why I have mentioned is that these 5 innovative areas are going to revolutionize pharma. So this is what I'm talking about. These are advances in pharmaceutical sciences. You know, I can tell you probably I can add another 5 more areas. But how do we harness that to change or to provide solutions to the healthcare challenges in our country? I leave you with a question that how any one of these things can be harnessed in our country to make a huge difference to patient lives. It's a huge challenge, and if I am in your shoes, I am willing to take the challenge. Some of you can ask me the intelligent question, why don't you just to take now. But if I take that and do it, that means I'm taking your opportunity. I don't want to do that. I think it is your turn to do that. Next slide. Says what I want to say finally. Thank you.
As Dr. RAO was saying when he started his lecture, it took 3.5 years to bring him here. It is very difficult. He cannot get time. Whenever his time is available, we plan things. I know students definitely take home so many things from him. It's very, very difficult for many of the people to see him or talk to him. I'm blessed and my students are blessed. Thank you very much, sir. I think, yes, please sum up the year.
Respected correspondent, Director Sir, and the Chief Guest Dr. RAO VADLAMUDI, distinguished guest Professor J. Vizianagaram, Anil Kumar Mahabatra, and Principal Sir Shankar Garu, and the teaching faculty as well as the students. I thank for the detailed, scientific, motivative, educational lecture from Dr. Rao sir, as well as I thank Dr. Rao for educating us with the serious challenges of the healthcare profession with respect to the pharmaceutical science, as well as advancements must influence education, as he said, as well as research, drug development, practice. The impact of the quality of research on healthcare profession, as well as the words like super drugs or super bugs, and patient-centric focus with respect to the national disease burden, safe use of drugs, better patient, better treatment options, and innovations like 3D printing, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. On this occasion, I am reproducing the words of Dr. Rao's CPA President Acceptance Speech in Australia. We as pharmacists should understand that there is no single solution for the problems in attaining advances in pharmaceutical sciences. For better healthcare, we shall move on several fronts to counter it. We must use our collective wisdom, ideas, opinions in attaining patient-centric healthcare. As well as, finally, if going gets tough, the tough gets going. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for the education. Thank you. And Dr. Rao sir is easily accessible. We'll give his email ID as a slide after this. And I request Dr. Rao sir for a small felicitation of the college.
Good afternoon, Maharajah. This is MC Vaishnavi studying B.Pharmacy third year in Maharajah's College of Pharmacy. Firstly, it's my privilege to have a chance to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Anil Kumar Mahabatra Garu, MD/DM, who is a fellow member of American College of Cardiology, FACC, and College for Cardiovascular. He completed his medical graduation from Maharajah Krishna Chandra Gajapati Medical College, Brahmapur, Orissa, as a best outgoing student with honors in pathology, pharmacology, general surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, and ophthalmology. He pursued an MD in general medicine as a gold medalist from Jawaharlal Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education and Research, that is JIPMA, Pondicherry, and is a DM cardiology postgraduate from Brand Medical College and JJ Group of Hospitals in 2007. He started his career as an assistant professor in cardiology in High-Tech Medical College and Hospital, Bhubaneswar, Orissa from September 2007 to April 2008, and in Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences, popularly known as the NIMS, Hyderabad from June 2008 to October 2008. He also worked as a consultant interventional cardiologist in Usha Mullapudi Cardiac Center, Hyderabad from November 2008 to May 2009, and in Manipal Super Specialty Hospital, Vijayawada from May 2009 to August 2010. He was married to Srimati Dr. Rashmira, a renowned ophthalmologist who is working in Shankar Foundation Eye Hospital, Vizianagaram. He is a life member in Cardiology Society of India and Indian Medical Association. Sir worked as a sub-investigator for drugs involved in rheumatoid arthritis treatment, undergoing clinical trials phase 3. Besides that, he published a few works including endothelial dysfunction and early diagnosis of cardiovascular risk in diabetes mellitus in collaboration with Mr. S.S. Mishra and isolated single coronary artery presenting as acute coronary syndrome and more. He is currently working as a consultant interventional cardiologist in Indus Hospitals, Vizianagaram, India. We are honored by your presence on this occasion, sir, and without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Anil Kumar Mahapatra Garu onto the dais.